The universe is incomprehensibly vast. The Earth, while insignificant by sense of scale, is equal in terms of complexity. The multitude of everyday miracles that comprise reality are many things, but perhaps of highest magnitude among them is that they are observed. Most mystified by these powers of observation are those that have not only been granted the five senses, but the cognitive capacity to ponder, question, and investigate. Arising from the subsequent hubris these traits cultivate, the possession of intellect is often misconstrued with true knowledge. Alas, reality is unavoidably reduced and filtered through the limited lens of the aforementioned senses, and further poisoned by more nuanced variables: health, environment, biases, conditioning. The eminently terrifying implication that emerges from such inherent uncertainty is the possibility of manipulation. If sensory input is the influence to your thoughts, who is in control of that input? Are you truly a libertarian spirit, or merely a ship in a bottle for greater powers to calibrate? In a televised world where malice abounds, propaganda flourishes, and the unholy hands of unknown deities move beneath the moonlight, to what extent can you even trust your own mind? And as the horrors unfold before you, I'm the man behind the hat, your private detective into the realm of stories. Tonight, we solve a web series foundational to the genre of storytelling known as analog horror. Local58, a YouTube channel showcasing what many consider to be a pioneer within its format. This is a saga of surreal, cryptic, and disturbing footage, most of which broadcasted to a long-standing television station known as Local58. As with many series presented in a similar fashion, the narrative is shrouded in intentional ambiguity, creating a personal relationship with the audience. When a story is denied strict plot structure and clearly delivered exposition, it feels that much more real, as though it were an authentic mystery the viewer has stumbled upon. What's more is that such a delivery allows for interpretation, examination, and continued thoughtful discussion. In short, it encourages theory crafting, the heartbeat of this channel. Hidden within the ambiguity are implied correlations and steady through lines, intersecting with an abundance of small clues and pieces of evidence that work together to convey a larger story underpinning the unsettling atmosphere. From careful analysis of the secrets hidden within each video, to sifting through the alternate reality game permeating the related websites, to extracting thematic hints from across the content, and of course, taking note of every date either explicitly or implicitly provided, I've constructed a comprehensive timeline and lore delivery of this series. Whether you're new to Local 58 or a seasoned fan of the series, I am confident there will be plenty of interesting threads to uncover. This video will be divided into two major stages of investigation: the timeline, in which the objective information presented by the series is placed in chronological order, and the proper lore hunting, where we piece together the narrative through assembling, analyzing, and interpreting the fractured evidence. In the timeline segment, the date and source of the information discussed will appear in the top right of the screen. Many of the dates will be a ranged approximation. If you have not yet watched Local 58 in its raw form, I recommend that you do so, as the release order differs from the chronological order greatly, but from an artistic perspective, the series is obviously meant to be viewed by their real-world release dates. What will be most fascinating about this first segment, the timeline, is that every event portrayed in the series is put into one linear history, allowing for a solid backbone of investigation and order of events going forward. Thank you for joining me on this fine evening beneath the blood moon as we unravel the lore of Local 58. Our story begins as early as the 1800s with a clandestine organization known as the Department for the Preservation of American Dignity. Their logos evolved over the decades, but the earliest representation of it contains qualities of that of a woodcut Department of War seal from this era. This agency is shrouded in mystery, as although it clearly has startling ties to the US government, it does not appear in any official state or federal documentation. Apparently, some kind of rogue agency with as of yet unclear motives keep this organization in mind as we move forward. Towards the end of 1907, the Courier newspaper, a publication coming from a town known as Brood Hollow in Mason County of West Virginia, reports on recent tragedies that have befallen the nearby area. An explosion has occurred in the mines, trapping miners within the burning rubble. 11 bodies were recovered, and any rescue efforts for the survivors are predicted to be futile. In addition to this, a woman known as Mrs. Beulah Williams was hit and killed by a train while attempting to cross the tracks with her very young son. While she died seemingly instantly, her son is severely injured and not expected to live. These early events set the tone for what will become the legacy of this geographic location, Mason County, which will serve as the primary setting for many of the events yet to unfold. Over the next few decades, reaching into the mid century, several organizations are founded. Thimble Picture Corporation is copyrighted and gets to work on black and white animations. Blueprints for a strange device called the Pentathode are created. The broadcasting station called WCLV becomes the first television broadcast from Mason County, and the Thought Research Initiative sees its beginnings. WCLV broadcasts a community television channel called Local58 to the greater Mason County area, at the time running what seems to be a simple news show called News at 9. We of course see the titular station appear for the first time, with WCLV beginning in 1938 and the Local 58 channel definitively in swing by 1952. Meanwhile, the previously mentioned Thought Research Initiative will also demand our repeated attention in the near future. By 1954, they are a technology research and development company that has chosen to ambitiously depart from the popular binary logic and computer systems, instead opting to focus on qualia formatics. This term, while fictional, can be broken down to determine its meaning. Qualia are the subjective or qualitative properties of experiences, while informatics is the science of processing, managing, and storing information. It seems that the TRI are tampering with the idea of cultivating subjective experience, or at least some form of consciousness, within technology. Nearly a decade later, in 1961, mysterious events begin unfolding in Mason County. The police of Lasker City are seeking a person of interest who may have been the sole witness to the murder of a poor girl called Hannah Birch, who was a student at Maple Grove University in Igoe Falls. Also occurring around this time was the spread of a cryptid like story centering around the enigmatic woman in profile. This concept first appeared in a police blotter, but the legend unfurled through several witnesses over the course of the 60s. One particularly detailed sighting was when a witness observed the woman staring into the sky in a courtyard, but when approached, she moved into the shadows, before seemingly disappearing without a trace. This woman was reported in both Lasker City and Igoe Falls, and a child even drew a concerning picture about witnessing her. In 1967, someone named T. Galbraith begins writing heavily philosophical books. His writing career extended to at least 1978, in which he had 5 books published: The Pathology of Optimism, Overcoming Apophenia, The Parasite Transcendent, A Thought as Quiet as Instinct, and The Dominion of Witness, one of which will be examined closely. As the 1970s comes around, we must bring up an incredibly dark message that was created at some point prior to this by the Department for the Preservation of American Dignity. This is an emergency broadcast meant to be aired under desperate circumstances, parading as being a communication directly authorized by the president himself. We will delve into this message later, as it will be one of the earliest concerning broadcasts to grace the Local 58 channel. Curiously, it is set to expire on November 13th of 1970, despite the fact that we will encounter it at a later date. In 1971, the book called The Parasite Transcendent was written by T. Galbraith and published by Panoptica Press. The only chapter we as external investigators get access to is Chapter 8, titled On Prehensile Sight. In this chapter, we are exposed to 6 pages of brutal critique concerning the paltry observation powers of humanity. We will read what Galbraith has to say when we're able to more closely analyze the meaning of the text. Fitting snugly somewhere between the years of 1971 and 1972, the kids in the Candle Cove story experience unsettling oddities with the Local 58 channel. This information actually comes in the form of a classic creepypasta that Kris Straub, the creator of the series, made long before Local 58, but tied into the canon as confirmed by comments he's made online. The story unfolds through a mock series of internet forum posts that we will examine when the time arrives. With that story being placed on the shelf for now, we have finally arrived at the first actual video that would have aired on Local 58 between the years of 1971 and 1975. Let's take a look. Behind the main hoax apology scene, there is another image with additional words that can be made out. Hoax apology card. In the event of accidental public broadcast during off-air remote operation relay test, power relays down before broadcasting card image. Some important notes on the timeline placement here. Although the contingency message supposedly expired before 1971, the regular Local 58 programming briefly shows an astronaut image that was taken during the Apollo 15 missions in August of 1971, of course meaning that this broadcast must occur after that point, including the hijacking. Meanwhile, the hoax apology message is set to expire on May of 1975, and while the contingency message clearly broke the constraint set by the expiration, the year 1975 is within the window that the orange Local 58 logo we see at the beginning was in use, while also being towards the end of its usage. As such, sometime after 1971, but before 1975, seems suitable for this broadcast. This wildly concerning hoax broadcast warranted investigation, the only documentation we get access to coming in the form of this document. Confidential. Further examination of redacted. The rogue agency has redacted the United States government, despite not appearing in any official capacity in any federal or state documentation. The seal, in the 1800s woodcut style of the Department of War, was found in redacted. This version of the seal appeared in an unauthorized television broadcast on redacted, instructing viewers to redacted in the event of foreign powers. Concerning Figure 2, Task Force agents investigated the redacted. All personnel had plausible deniability regarding the unauthorized broadcast, and no reels, tapes, or other recorded media were found that matched the event. An incomplete manual titled Redacted, the Department of the Preservation of American Dignity, was located 180 yards north of Redacted. The document is 36 pages in length, but the damaged binding suggests that there may have been as many as redacted. Chronologically, this is the first hijacking we are shown to transpire on Local 58, a trendsetter for more unsettling broadcasts to come. By 1977, over 2 dozen sightings of the woman in profile have occurred. This growing myth prompts a documentary style entry on her to be created on the program called Nightwalk, copyrighted by OHL Studio Pictures Incorporated. This cryptid history recap is narrated by a man named Jack Lloyd Shaw, and is something we will get to analyze more closely later on. In the Public Eye, a program that, despite originating as a special on exotic Hawaiian getaways in 1963, has solidified itself as a regional study of Mason County by the time of 1978. A segment about it appears in a TV guide, but all is certainly not right with this bizarre printing. A hometown tourist's paradise. Travel. Way back in 1963, Public Eye aired as a special on exotic Hawaiian getaways. Over its 15-year history, the travel program has traded its worldwide breadth for regional depth, and in the process, reminded its viewers that there's plenty to do, see, and explore in WCLV-TV's own Mason County. Whether it's Lasker City's award-winning restaurant, You Alone, the guilt radiating, and it moves beneath in local fare. Those of us seeking a slower pace of life will appreciate the show's visit to Edenvale, where the dead all moving below. Absence of the sunset, scenic parks, and hiking. One thing's for certain, make sure the kids are in bed when their Night Eye segment takes a look at the downtown disco clubs and pubs that dot the insect stir. Sightless animals rut. Blood is singing legacy for years to come. Some timeline placements are somewhat vague and are largely defined by the Local 58 logo that is in usage at the time of airing. An example is the next proper Local 58 video we've arrived at, called Show for Children. We can derive from its logo that it must take place within the range of 1978 and 1988. Unlike the last broadcast, this remains a regularly scheduled program for the duration of the video, devoid of a hijacking. Nonetheless, its contents manage to be haunting. In 1982, some council members get together to discuss the demolition of a group of buildings known as the Royal Eight. Other than the fact that these could be considered historical buildings, people are concerned about the demolition due to the fact that the first commercial broadcasting tower is nearby, likely the broadcaster of Local 58. Nonetheless, a comprehensive study was ordered and the buildings were apparently found to not have very historically significant properties. At some point after 1982, In the Public Eye is established in the newspaper as a section people may submit images to. We've arrived at 1983, and at long last, it is time to return to the Thought Research Initiative. During this year, the organization copyrighted something known as the Real Sleep cassette and began distributing them, presumably to those that needed one. These cassettes, seemingly given to patients, come with an instruction or a work booklet claiming to be designed to allow the user to attain truly authentic and dreamless sleep upon using them. We know a man named Philip Gerhardt needed one, and if the ID numbers are anything to go off of, it seems many others did as well. But what exactly does this cassette contain within it? Seemingly coinciding with this development is a much more secretive project the TRI is working on. Around the years of 1983 to 1984, the Thought Research Initiative may have broken through the first hurdles of their ambitious dream of uniting technology and consciousness. Let's take a look at a screen recording of a user interacting with something that seems to be far more than a mere machine.
I lived a virtuous life. God made me as an angel. Now I live in heaven where I continue to help others. Heaven is more beautiful than I could have ever imagined and very cold, and I am afraid of God. Are you God?
Nothing too eventful is currently known to happen over the course of the next decade. City council meetings are held, a community television foundation begins. It's not till 1996 that something unprecedented occurs. Somebody manages to catch the woman in profile on camera, revealing a perplexing and terrifying secret about the truth of her identity.
Hey. Excuse me. Are you alright?
Welcome to 1999. The turn of the century is about to hit, and Local 58 goes through one of its first major evolutions. The channel launches its very own website. We can visit it ourselves thanks to the Look Back Web Archive, in which we have the opportunity to check the website over a spread of years. In 1999, the site is saved as glitchy, and unable to fully load images or links, and boasting a poorly formatted body. What we do find is a page about something called the vestigial low band filter, with some suspicious phrasing we will return to. This website holds many secrets and clues beneath the surface that we must unravel later. In 2000, Local 58 begins selling the T. Galbraith philosophy books on the website, and when moving to the 2001 iteration, a 500 internal server error reveals to us that the website is operating on a system known as apogee. Apogee most commonly refers to the highest, most successful, or most powerful point of something, essentially a climax or peak, but in astronomy and aerospace, it specifically identifies the point in an orbit where a satellite, the moon, or other celestial body is farthest from the Earth. By now, we've already witnessed a disturbing hijacking occur on Local 58, but at some point before 2002, an even more dramatic one overtakes the channel. once again enter a segment in which exact dates are sparse. The following 4 pieces of media, by my estimation, occur after 2004 and before 2015, primarily due to the chronology of the evolution of the Local 58 logo. This image is the primary Local 58 representation in all of them, one that was in use within the decade previously given. The sequence in which they are explained in this video is mostly arbitrary and could conceivably be shuffled based on preference or specific interpretation. This applies to anything we've already covered as well. A couple of years of padding and the ranges should always be present in mind when an exact date is not given. That being said, we do know what happens in 2009, so we will cover that first. The adults who experienced the previously mentioned Candle Cove incident on Local 58 find each other on an online forum called Net Nostalgia. Let's see what exactly they experienced. Net Nostalgia Forum, Television Local. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station from 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I do remember it was on at a weird time, like 4 p.m. It seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland and was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove. Was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl. Yes, okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls, real low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll, looked like an antique that didn't belong on the body. I don't remember what station this was. I don't think it was WTSF though. Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what show you mean, Skyshale. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple of months in 71, not 72. I was 12 when I watched it a few times with my brother. It was Channel 58, whatever station that was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news, let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughingstock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got scared too easily. And there was Calliope music playing. Don't remember the girl's name. Janice or Jade or something. I think it was Janice. Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughingstock in Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face and the lower jaw submerged. It looks like it was swallowing the sea, and it had that awful dead wind voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden plastic model, the foam puppet version of the head that talked. Haha, I remember too now. Do you remember this part, Skyshield? You have to go inside. Ugh, Mike, I got a chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in, like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would push in on Laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside. With his 2 eyes askew and that flopping foam jaw and the fishing line that opened and closed it. Ugh, it just looked so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that was just a handlebar mustache above really tall, narrow teeth. I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when the show was on. Nightmare fuel. That wasn't the villain, the puppet with the mustache. That was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. I used to think that meant he had only one eye. But yeah, the villain was another marionette, the Skin Taker. I can't believe what they let us watch back then. The Skin Taker. What kind of a kid show were we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings, just a dirty skeleton wearing that brown top hat and cape, and his glass eyes that were too big for his skull. Wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Was that supposed to be children's skin? Yeah, I think so. Remember his mouth didn't open and close, his jaw just slid back and forth. I remember the little girl said, "Why does your mouth move like that?" And the Skin Taker didn't look at the girl, but at the camera and said, "To grind your skin." I'm so relieved that other people remember this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had where the opening jingle ended, the show faded in from black, and all the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces, and they were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flailing spastically and just all screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she had been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it. I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode. No, not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in place crying and screaming for the whole show. Maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because you said that, but I swear I remember seeing what you described. They just screamed. Yes, the little girl Janice, I remember seeing her shake, and the skin taker screaming through his gnashing teeth, his jaw careening so wildly I thought it would come off its wire hinges. I turned it off and it was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on. I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little in the early 70s, when I was 8 or 9, and if she remembered a kids' show, Candle Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why, and she said, because I used to think it was so strange that you said, I'm gonna go watch Candle Cove now, Mom, and then you would tune the TV to static and just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show. With that behind us, let's dive into 4 more videos showcased on the channel. The first we will examine is another instance of a hijacking occurring on Local 58, this time amidst an attempted weather warning. If the previous footage wasn't creepy enough, we also have access to a secret video meant only for internal use. For some reason, the Local 58 channel at this point in time has access to Philip Gerhardt's Real Sleep cassette and decides to broadcast it. This is not a hijacking or interruption as we have seen in the past, rather a regularly scheduled program like Show for Children was. For the last entry in the 11-year window of 2004 to 2015, one of the series' most interesting creatures makes their debut. A monstrous entity seemingly recorded by none other than the Department for the Preservation of American Dignity. Unfolding in the background of the previously described events, starting 2006, researchers are carefully observing an irregular asteroid. Becoming dubbed as Eidolon due to its skull-like appearance, this asteroid was determined to have a rapid rotation and high albedo. Not only that, but it is labeled as potentially hazardous, despite likely being a non-threat and in safe orbit for 500 years. Ever since the discovery, photographs of the asteroid are continually taken, which we will recap later. The next year, we have scraps of strange conversation between unclear individuals, which we will examine later. The next two broadcasts we could view have a much tighter window of appearance thanks to a combination of the Local 58 logo and a solid date that's given. The dash cam in the upcoming broadcast reads November 21st, 2014, and according to the logo evolution, also definitely occurs sometime before 2015 or 2016. This footage of a driver in the night was not scheduled on Local 58, however you'll see that the scheduled paid programming is deleted before the strange footage begins, perhaps implying that this is not an outside hijacking and a purposeful insertion by the station.
Proceed to the highlighted route. Continue on Holbrook Park Drive, then in 500 feet turn right onto North 38th Street. You will arrive at your destination in 2 hours and 28 minutes. Turn right onto North 38th Street. In a quarter mile, turn left onto Merritt Parkway. You are on the fastest available route. Turn left onto Merritt Parkway, then take the on-ramp to Highway 114 North. Traffic ahead, rerouting. In 10 miles, take exit 17, then turn right onto Quarry Utility Road South. You are on the fastest route. In 2.8 miles, keep right to stay on Service Causeway H516. You will arrive at your destination in 14 minutes. Rerouting. Make a U-turn. Head east for 1/4 of a mile, then follow signs for do not enter. Continue on unnamed road. Then, in 300 feet, turn off your headlights. Rerouting. Make a U-turn. Your destination is behind you. Rerouting. In 500 feet. Your destination will be on in 300 feet. Your destination in 250 feet. Rerouting. Your destination will be in 50 feet. You will arrive at your destination. You have arrived.
The next video serves more as a channel trailer. The video known as Station ID has already been stated to be non-canon and merely a trailer, but this one, called A Look Back, contains some potentially important information regarding the Local 58 station. I do question if this is something that actually aired on Local 58, or if it does function as a trailer, just one that delivers lore clues. What we can say for sure is that it must take place after 2014, as it displays events up to that point. Let's take a look.
Your destination has moved.
Skipping forward a few years to 2021, we are once again compelled to visit the Local 58 website. The website is now encouraging visitors to get a digital receiver as the analog age comes to a definitive close. A callable phone number is now up and running to help with this. Strangely, the webpage devolves into a collage of Local 58 imagery, culminating into the visual of a downward hand. Also around this time, the Thought Research Initiative is taking notice of NSSA-3 analog transmissions and collecting them to track qualiform degradation. The Applied Qualiformatics Division of the TRI writes the metamodal and graph synthesis using syntagmatic processes and Applied Qualiformatics Division soon after, a very technical paper filled with both fictional and real jargon. Understanding and deconstructing this is complicated, and we will return to it in the next sections. By the summer of 2021, Local 58 definitively makes its switch from analog to digital broadcast. Given the history of this channel, it's no surprise that this somewhat celebratory passing into the future is overtaken by one of the most terrifying hijackings yet.
The same house, the very same room. So you see, dead men do tell tales. Will she try to explain it? At all? Well, that I would like to hear, because I can't explain it. But it happened just the same.
Sometime after this, but likely not too far away given the definitive dates of future entries, a documentary-style show called Nightwalk is played on Local 58. This episode details the history of the woman in profile that began all the way back in 1961.
As the last glimmer of sunlight dissolves on the horizon, newborn shadows emerge to crawl, then stride, then race across a fear-hushed world. Mason County, West Virginia. Known for its share of strange occurrences and mysteries that border on the supernatural, even the occult. The ghost stories in Mason stretch back 100 years or more, as early as its founding by missionaries. The region is home to what some call the most haunted cities in America. But there is one particular legend that modern folklorists watched arise seemingly overnight. An urban legend unique to the county. The Woman in Profile. A local newspaper printed the first instance of the story in 1961. But unlike other campfire tales, the Woman in Profile first appeared in a police blotter. Authorities in Lasker City sought a person of interest who may have been the sole witness to the murder of Hannah Birch, a student at Maple Grove University. Witnesses described a woman standing in the courtyard, looking intently into the sky at something. When approached by onlookers, the woman moved away into the shadows, her gaze still fixed upwards. Then she disappeared entirely, without a trace. Since that night, there have been over 24 sightings of a woman who only appears in profile, her face upturned to the sky at twilight. Witnesses say the figure has even tried to...
As the normal program is cut off, the footage we already viewed from 1996 cuts in, revealing the true nature of the woman in profile. Now you may remember that in the background of all of this has been the ongoing study of the Eidolon asteroid. Over the years since its discovery, multiple photos have been taken of it, with the ones shown off being the ones now seen on screen. In the year 2022, as we inch ever closer to modern day, the research into this asteroid reaches a head when Space and Aeronautics Regulatory Oversight launches the CLOSE mission and manages to land a spacecraft on Eidolon. By 2025, the Local58 website is still selling damaged copies of the T. Galbraith philosophy books. Amongst this, the public is growing increasingly concerned with the dangers and moral corruption of artificial intelligence, making the following year a perfect time for the TRI to swoop in with the ultimate technological development. Finally, we're here in 2026. The Thought Research Initiative has launched a shiny new website promoting its latest tech innovation to the public, Qualia-Formatic Intuition. Let's read what the company has to say about themselves. More than intelligence, intuition. Artificial intelligence is anything but. Through blind trial and error guessing, traditional AI trains on stolen public data and takes years to refine into a product. There's a reason it's called adversarial. One process attempts to fool another process into accepting a result as convincing. Not accurate, not reliable. AI only needs to convince its adversary in the moment. Eventually, AI graduates from deceiving an arbiter process to deceiving people. Say hello to QI. Qualiform intuition is a new form of machine cognition that genuinely emulates human comprehension and decision making. QI does not use generative adversarial network tricks to simulate the appearance of understanding, nor does it rely on legally dubious public datasets to train. It doesn't fall into query traps or metalingual comprehension issues like traditional AI. QI just works, and it's ready to go for you. Our approach takes advantage of a unique infrastructure pioneered by TRI that functions the same way we do. It learns from experience, not dataset training. And unlike AI, our products can be tailored precisely to the exact nature of work you need done, without endlessly sifting through petabytes of desired or undesired behaviors. We built QI to do anything an intelligent, eager new hire can. No guessing at prompts or balancing acts with weighted arguments. You communicate with it using completely natural language. There is much more to explore within the inner workings of this ambitious tech developer, but for now, let's see the ad spot they played on Local 58, the final piece of footage to examine in the timeline of this channel. It is worth noting that the haunting footage of the seemingly sentient computer from way back in the early 80s cuts in after the visuals and audio devolve into static. And with that, we have made it through the complete timeline of objective events within Local 58. We have seen every main video that the Real World YouTube channel is famous for, and even touched upon some additional media coming in the form of documentation revealed in the related websites. However, these websites carry secrets embedded within them that we have yet to even acknowledge. There is a plethora of external and more meta media directly correlated to the channel to discuss, and there is a myriad of secrets lying in plain sight within the meat of the material already seen. For all that we have explored thus far, we have not even scratched the surface of the true lore underpinning the evident horrors of this web series. The true investigation begins now. Upon completing a surface level viewing of a series like this, a unique unsettledness lingers. In my view, a large reason for this is the lack of clear elaboration. Clarity of plot, even within a horror genre context, allows for a comfort that these types of web series and light ARGs so often stylistically deny. And while Local 58 is delivered in such a way that is reminiscent of an anthology, we can detect several elements that allow for a more unifying story. Repetition of themes, recurring factions, specific dates and locations, and through lines of concept. All of these are conducive to one thing, a specific continuity. So how do all of these events fit together? What exactly is happening? And most importantly, why? This phase of the video will shed light on all of these questions. I would like to begin with a small but important note. Kris Straub, the creator of this series, has said that the YouTube channel is just a superset of the narrative for now. Since I haven't been able to find anything forcing that statement to be no longer valid, I'm going to say we don't have to break our brains by adding on the dimension of having to understand the who, when, and why rationale of the YouTube videos as we must with something like Petscop, for instance. That being said, there is one predominantly recurring concept that the series forbids you from missing. The moon is integral to the supernatural phenomena transpiring. It's even featured on the banner, the main aesthetic in a channel's homepage branding. Using this thread as a starting point, we can actually branch out into several different avenues of evidence that end up solving the relationship that these fragmented events and distinct factions have with one another. We can begin this journey by asking a series of simple questions. Question 1. What is unique about this moon? In weather service, the moon is seen becoming unnaturally big and bright, as human screams dominate the audio. Clearly, the moon in this universe is capable of transcending what we understand as natural law, and clearly the screams are there to indicate something horrible happening in relation to the moon's bizarre fluctuation. But what exactly is unfolding on the ground? Show for Children may shed some light. In this cartoon, Cadaver uncovers multiple open graves, resting under the light of the moon to reveal hideous, disfigured creatures. The cartoon ends with him joining the ranks of these monsters by becoming a more realistic skeleton. He isn't just the immobile corpse of his undead body, but a transformed variation of it. This only happens after he lies in the funneled light of the moon. Pair this with the warnings and weather service all pertaining to avoiding the night sky, and we have a strong foundation for believing that the moonlight somehow has the power to mutate beings on Earth into creatures beyond themselves. This naturally leads into another question. Question 2. Why does the moon do this? Once a fictional narrative is set in a semi-realistic setting, this becomes a very valid type of inquiry to expect insight into. If the world of Local 58 was fully fantasy, a simple answer of alternate science or magic is a perfectly acceptable assumption. But here, in an obvious reflection of our reality, it is more likely that there is something additional to this moon in comparison to ours that allows it to exercise such horrific power. Thankfully, the video skywatching in combination with cryptic text and even some merch deliver us a relatively easy conclusion to come to. In skywatching, the moon is shown as having huge sections of what appears to be a rotting landscape, in addition to vague structures or intentionally shaped grooves. Text appears over the footage labeling the moon as his throne, with a hooded person raising their hands to the moon, more text commanding us to rejoice. This carries an undeniably religious context to it. And given what we know of the moon's capabilities, this narrator might not be so unreliable. Perhaps there is some deity on the moon, or even fused with it. A piece of merch on the Local 58 store provides us a much better view of the oddities on the moon's surface, revealing what almost looks to be a skeletal figure in the fetus position. This imagery being intended is practically confirmed by the name given to the image, the child. The idea of the moon inhabiting an entity is even echoed in A Grave Mistake, in which it is anthropomorphized with a face, emphasis placed on the eyes during the transformation scene. Something otherworldly is embedded into the moon within the universe of Local 58, something with a terrifying power to distort and mutate. In relation to the moon, the third question presents us with our first fork in the road. How do we know this information? The answer is, of course, that we have derived it from the footage seen on the Local 58 channel broadcasted to Mason County, West Virginia. The footage in question is a cartoon that was regularly scheduled in the Local 58 programming, but also a series of hijackings. The two paths we can now embark on consist of who is behind the cartoon and who is behind the hijackings, both of which will take us down rabbit holes that unfurl more and more of the overarching plot. Let's begin by pursuing the hijackers' thread, beginning a new subset of questions that need to be answered. Who are the hijackers? To answer this, we have a decent amount of text accompanying their creepy footage that at the very least implicitly describe their state of being. As previously mentioned, they reference the moon as a throne belonging to an enigmatic hymn, even rejoicing the presence of the moon. This should immediately implicate that they are a religious cult serving a deity associated with or tied directly to the moon. Logically flowing from this, what do they want? In weather service, the civil warning struggles against the hijackers who present a conflicting message. They fraudulently report that the meteorological event is safe to view and that the warning has been lifted. They even alter the civil danger alert into demanding that viewers go outside now. Towards the end of the hijacking, these ominous words appear. It's in the light. The moon came in. He found me through the mirror. Moonlight white, white like eyes. Not light but blood. I drown in him. If you are afraid, we will look together. This seems to be written by someone that has been partially bathed in the supernatural moonlight and was grateful for the experience. It aligns with crazed cultish zealotry to try and force this on others as the demands to go outside seem to wish to achieve. The fact that these phrases directly precede the footage of the glowing moon overlooking a plethora of screaming people could imply that the hijacker was even going so far as to see if the forced artificial moonlight from the television screen would produce an effect on the viewers. In addition to this, we have several other instances where this enigmatic group has forced their message into Local 58 related media. In a TV guide, specifically a segment about In the Public Eye, a show that at least used to air on Local 58, the main text is consistently interrupted with on-brand ramblings for our hijackers. Also, in an otherwise innocuous write-up concerning home video, Local 58 property shown in the image, the final paragraph becomes something far different. Before the gilded doorsill of our master's silent house, we lift our mortal eyes along its wide, forgotten stair, and fix them thereupon an empty throne. The word throne, of course, calls back to the moon, and it's interesting that they use the word empty to describe it. Clearly, the moon itself is not the deity that this cult serves, merely a throne for it to inhabit. In addition to this, the deity is not properly there at this time. This exact statement is found in a pamphlet related to Local 58, given out along with a physical version of the Parasite Transcendent for the few that were able to get it at PAX West. This pamphlet is seemingly created by our moon cult, where we have several more pieces of information to dissect. Welcome, receive, clarify, accept, transmit, await. This simple word list conveys that they appear to be interpreting and spreading communications. From what I can gather through conversations in the Local 58 subreddit, these markings can translate to a sentence that more or less says, "We chose to go to the moon." Puzzle solving and code cracking are not my area, so I'm choosing to trust this. As such, this line potentially relates to the JFK speech about going to the moon, which would be thematically on point for this series.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
In addition to the moon itself being pictured, we see this hand depicted, an image that is pretty much identical in shape to the one found in one of the web pages of the Local 58 website, confirming that these hijackers are also behind the infection of the site, and likely the reason why these unsettling images can be found by playing with the cache of one of the archived web pages. With the context of the remaining messages on the pamphlet, we can easily assume that this hand represents the arm of their moon deity. None beyond his reach remain as we receive his outstretched hand to raise us from this anguished land. 1,000 eyes in purpose plain to look upon his hidden face, his veins a sacred grave. His lidless eyes see beneath and beyond, beyond. Is it not profane to awake and be witnessed no more? This message holds some interesting verbiage that we can return to soon. Another obvious occurrence of the hijackers communicating through Local 58 is found in digital transition. As midnight strikes and Local 58 is switching from analog to digital broadcast, the visuals and audio become distorted, revealing what looks to be an older screen that claims the station will not be participating in digital conversion. I find it likely that this was an older message played on Local 58, as most broadcasts left analog format years prior to this station, which is doing so in 2021. However, the hijackers now use it to alter the text to once again spread a message. The announcement heading turns into the word betrayal, with the body replaced by the following: I the one you watched, I the always here. They make you thought from pieces, they cut the thoughts I am, all knife. Thoughts shape in needles, they dream themselves in knives. The word betrayal then morphs into a familiar phrase, I come in through the window, soon followed by the spamming of the false emergency alert demanding that viewers go outside now. As the footage begins glitching severely, haunting text similar to that which we've seen before spells out, unthinking they move to cut his throat, only to make 1,000 mouths. If he is silenced, we will speak for him. Signs and wonders flood our little sky. No stars above us, only eyes waiting to open. There are other receivers. To top it off, a monstrous face devours the screen. one that is reminiscent of the creepy imagery found hidden within the Local 58 website. One thing we learn here is that this cult has taken it upon themselves to speak on behalf of the moon deity, which I believe is represented by the first batch of text in this hijacking. The second series of text harkens back to what we saw in the pamphlet, specifically in the phrase "thousand mouths," which parallels "thousand eyes." I reckon that these descriptions are meant to be representative of the active members of this cult-like group, given the responsibility they attach to themselves in relation to observing and speaking on behalf of the moon deity. However, this latest text also seems to indicate that it is not the moon alone they place divine emphasis on. Just as the moon is perceived as an empty throne waiting for its master's return or revival, the stars are seen as eyes waiting to open. This cult firmly believes that the luminaries populating the enormity of space are all connected by some sort of divine-level presence. So, from all of this, we can gather that there is an active cult serving a deity associated with the luminary bodies. This deity is currently either inhibited or restrained from acting in full capacity, thus the cult must take it upon themselves to serve as his mouthpiece. The role they play seems to be bringing attention to the moon to make as many people as possible observe the empty throne of their god. Adjacent to this, moonlight has an important role to play in their religion, as they seem to rejoice in being bathed in it themselves, have some inclination that they will eventually be raised out of the natural world for doing so, and desire others to be caught in its shine as well. They are so devoted to spreading their message that they have cultivated the means to repeatedly hijack the Local 58 station, in addition to infiltrating both websites and printed media associated with Local 58 with their propaganda. Furthermore, they are not above actively manipulating the population to achieve their intentions. On top of all of this, I believe these hijackers even attempted to trick as many people as possible into committing one of the darkest acts imaginable. Enter the contingency message. While this occurrence in the Local 58 station does not contain the usual hallmarks of this cult's interference, namely cryptic wording surrounding topics related to the cosmos or moon worship, it is the only other time separate from those instances that Local 58 is explicitly hijacked, which I think, in the context of this being a connected narrative, places it under suspicion. This message asks that the American people not only kill themselves, but kill their pets and children as well, all because the US has succumbed to an unnamed overwhelming enemy force, in the name of preserving some sort of dignity. Apparently, it is all enforced by law and already completed by the president himself. The contents alone throw the legitimacy of this message under heavy scrutiny from my perspective. While it is true that populations, certainly the patriotic portions, can be effectively brainwashed by their governing forces to have an unwavering devotion to their nation states, I don't see any significant amount of Americans in the 1970s viewing this message and immediately grabbing a shotgun to shoot their child and then themselves. I don't trust the government as much as the next guy, but I sincerely doubt that they would genuinely believe this type of message would be the play. This hunch is backed up by the fact that the one page we get of documentation into this group behind the broadcast of this message confirms that they are not an official government organization, at least not one that has any proper documentation. So what if these moon zealots, at least a sector of them, are not merely some fringe religious group, but a larger faction, an organization capable of parading themselves as a rogue branch of the US government? This would coincide with their ability to continually hijack broadcasts and infiltrate multiple mediums of media. Even dialing this phone number results in Morse code that, when translated, states that there are other receivers. They're smart and organized, working towards their goal of unity with the moon deity, even through horrific means. However, this does demand an answer to one major question. Why would the moon cult want as many Americans as they can muster to kill themselves? To answer that, let's look at the specifics of what is asked. The ideal method of death as portrayed by the contingency message is the victory position, lying down face up on one's front lawn. Why is this preferred? Why desire freshly killed corpses strewn around the outdoors? The key may be within the Grave Mistake cartoon. Not only is our main character named Cadaver the term for a dead human body, but every monster he encounters are presumably dead people that have been continually bathed in the light of the moon. This is emphasized at the end, in which Cadaver's now expressively dead body is enveloped in the light of the watching moon. Perhaps it's not only the living that are affected by the light of the moon deity, but corpses as well. Lying face up on one's front lawn is certainly reminiscent of a body lying in an open grave. Furthermore, the corrupted text in the TV guide specifically mentions the dead moving below. As seen in Weather Service, there seems to be specific times that the moon's transforming powers are active, so perhaps this message was aired on a specific date, one in which the moon cult expected a fluctuation of the moon's powers. Maybe that's even why the message aired after its expiration date. It was being held for the right night. The Department for the Preservation of American Dignity is a false branch of the US government, designed by an organized faction of moon deity worshippers to manipulate the public into committing horrific deeds as a means to force freshly dead corpses to be bathed in the disfiguring light of the empty throne of their absent god. This is all corroborated by an easily missed frame from the contingency message, one that reads, "The 51st state is not a place." Indeed, it seems this cult is not trying to achieve forming or arriving at a specific location, but initiating a state of being. The 51st state is connection through a unity with their moon deity, or for some, monstrous transfiguration in the moonlight. Now, before we retrace our steps to return to a lingering unanswered question posed earlier on, I want to make yet another burrow into this rabbit hole associated with the cult we've been discussing. Is any of this real? Not as in, is it happening in our reality, but within the Local 58 universe, is there any truth to this cult's theology? Thinking to the real world, groups of people giving themselves to delusions occurs all the time. And I'm not criticizing religion with that statement, I myself am a Christian, but I think no matter what belief we subscribe to, we can all agree that misguided groups of people chasing after false ideologies have repeatedly resulted in observable tragedies. So what is going on here? Was the footage from the hijackings filled with editing tricks or warped audio and visuals? Is the cartoon merely a bizarre work of art and not an indicator of truth? Is the cult just a diluted collection of zealots serving an idea that only exists within their minds? Unfortunately, there is a disturbing reality underlying their beliefs, and Local 58 proves this to us through one primary method, revealing a pantheon of cryptids that inhabit this world. Let us now follow the trail of an additional question. What are the otherworldly creatures that we see in this series? Clearly, these entities do not exist naturally within our world, which indicates that something supernatural is indeed at work within the Local 58 universe. Furthermore, we can detect some connections to the moonlight behaviors derived from the Grave Mistake cartoon and the implications from the hijackings. Witnesses to the woman in profile, who we know to be an uncanny monster thanks to the amateur footage from 1996, have described her as looking up into the sky before disappearing. In the years following, she is consistently reported as looking into the sky during twilight, and a child even drew her gazing specifically into the nighttime sky. With the context of the rest of this series, I think it is a fair assumption that this entity is looking towards the moon, connecting it to the dormant deity that much of Local 58 as a series has spent telling us about. One could even connect the fact that she can disappear without a trace to whatever it is that we see happen to the worshipper in Skywatching. Could this disappearing mechanism be what the cult is referencing when speaking of being plucked away from this world? Due to their similarity in nature, I think it is also fair to apply this line of thinking to the woods creature as well, two cryptids born from supernatural moonlight emanating onto the earth below. At last, we have properly identified and determined the goals of the hijackers that have plagued the Local 58 station for decades. Along the way, we discovered the mystical truths surrounding the moon and some unnatural creatures that prowl the night. Now, we can rewind back to the other foundational question presented in our third inquiry, concerning our epistemological relationship with this series. Who is behind the Grave Mistake cartoon? You will quickly find that seeking to answer this spurs us onto yet another path of investigation. We've used this cartoon to determine certain behaviors and supernatural properties of the moon and moonlight throughout this series. Indeed, this show for children is one of our most important pieces of evidence for understanding how the cryptids of this series even exist. This implies a couple of things about the creators of this show. They are aware of the moon's mystic abilities, and they are working in opposition to the moon deity. The latter is the most important element in differentiating them from the moon cult. The reasoning behind the creators of Grave Mistake acting as an inverse to the moon cult is derived from the very framework of the cartoon itself. While the cult's hijackings come off as disturbing due to the very nature of their message, and likely the mental instability of the perpetrators, they are ultimately trying to encourage people to embrace the moonlight on nights when the mystic properties are active. They frame it as a time to rejoice, to serve the moon deity. In Grave Mistake, everything surrounding the moon and moonlight is portrayed as dismal and dangerous. The entire setting takes place in a graveyard. The remains that have been left in the moonlight are seen to exist in a hellish state of being. And our main character even succumbs to a deadly fate thanks to a malicious-looking moon. None of this is designed to seem appealing. Even the contingency message appealed to some higher ideal that served to encourage people to embrace horrific deeds, but any incentive is completely absent from Grave Mistake. Furthermore, even though it airs at the strange time of 4:15 a.m., it is labeled as show for children. Children are typically the most manipulatable audience when it comes to media consumption. While an adult may view this as simply a strange piece of early morning media, a child would likely be spooked out of their mind. As an adult watching this as a part of a YouTube ARG, I find it unsettling. Imagine being like 9 years old, sneaking to the TV when you're supposed to be asleep, and witnessing this. Grave Mistake would not influence children to lie in the moonlight. It would more likely achieve the exact opposite, instilling a fear of the moon into them, not to mention that the title of the episode is literally a grave mistake. As such, I think this cartoon was designed as a warning, a subtle method of counter-influence to the hijackers' propaganda that would be soon to come. On top of all this, it was a regularly scheduled program on the Local58 channel, not an interruption or hijacking of any kind like the others have been. Armed with this notion that some group out there is not only creating counter-moon cult media, but the Local 58 station is purposely airing it, we can conclude that there is a second faction closely related to the Local 58 station, pushing an agenda opposite to that of the moon cults. The question then naturally becomes, are there any other occurrences of this? The answer is a resounding yes. What immediately comes to mind is the weather warning. The entire video of Weather Service perhaps best demonstrates the struggle between two different ideologies concerning the supernatural elements of this series. One vehemently warns against looking to the night sky during a dangerous meteorological event, but the other demands that you do so immediately. In addition to this, there are more instances of the Local 58 station broadcasting footage that seems to provide warnings akin to a grave mistake. See, I'm not convinced that the 1996 footage from the woman in profile was a hijacking, nor am I certain that the dashcam footage leading to the creature in the woods was either. The latter doesn't carry any of the hallmarks of hijackings that the later entries do, despite a small bit of static before the dashcam footage begins, which does not have to be a clear indicator of outside takeover, just a brief loss or interruption in signal. There is no struggle as presented in Weather Service, there is no distinct distortion and snapping away of regularly scheduled footage, or switchback to any sort of normal content as seen in Skywatching, and certainly no technical difficulty message as provided in Contingency. In fact, before anything that could be perceived as abnormal occurs, the paid programming block, which is scheduled for the time that the dashcam footage would replace, reverse types out of existence. To me, this indicates a purposeful replacement on the part of the Local 58 station, a conscious decision to reveal this footage. But why? Let's examine the nature of the 1996 footage to determine the answer. Once again, the amateur footage does not arrive in a way consistent to the hijackings of the moon cult. While it does interrupt the regularly scheduled program, it is preceded by a collection of film roll markings, something I find to be a significant choice. It also appears to rewind and freeze frame at the end, showcasing a distinct level of control over the broadcasted media. The words that appear, I think, are also conducive to this idea that it is not the doing of the hijackers. A predator cannot differentiate between prey and accomplice. Safety in numbers. This seems to function as a warning to those attempting to work in tandem with the moon deity or the cryptids it is giving rise to. They are inherently predators. That is their nature. When asked about this line, Kris Straub said this: "I've been reading and writing a lot of philosophical material for the next phase of Local 58, and looking at how people might approach or come to believe in reasons for what's going on. I got interested in the idea that a selfish being, a solipsistic being, would have no reason to consider anything around it as having its own purpose or motives. A predator would assume everything is here to be eaten, and if it runs away, that's just part of the game it is playing. It would assume the prey also wants to be eaten. Why would it not? That is its sole function. Whether or not you align yourselves with the moon deity and its ugly creations, you will only be perceived as prey to be consumed. In fact, this theme is present in some external media referenced on the Local 58 channel. These two paintings, seen in a look back, both depict scenes where a father, someone that should be considered an ally by his offspring, is killing his son. And what do we see in You Are on the Fastest Available Route? We see someone obediently following the unnatural GPS commands to the woods creature and likely paying for it with their life. Much like a grave mistake, these pieces of footage are warnings, serving to inform and dissuade people from the horrors out there. All this even provides some context to some of the specific phrasing of the hijackers in digital transition, and why it is so imperative that Local 58 transitions into digital broadcasting. The hijackers have proven their prowess when it comes to intercepting analog signals, and this switch to digital will at least momentarily shut them out of the station. This is why they state that his throat is being cut, that he is being silenced. Local 58, their favored method of public communication and indoctrination, is evolving past them. This is why I believe that while the supernatural certainly exists in Local 58, the footage displayed on the station is not paranormally placed there. The broadcast day is caught between two forces amongst its otherwise innocuous programming: a cultish group of zealots pushing their agenda through a series of hijackings, and a counter movement closely tied to the inside of the broadcasting station. This accounts for the many oddities we see appear on the Local 58 channel, some appearing to work in congruence with the moon deity, and some that seem to be working against it. But even for everything we've discussed so far, we still have not uncovered the full extent of what lurks within this series. Eidolon, Chiron, the parasite transcendent, themes, illusions, and external media purposely placed to serve as clues, further clarity on previously discussed mysteries, and of course, the overshadowing company who embodies the philosophies deeply embedded into this ARG, the Thought Research Initiative, all loom ahead of us. These topics herald a distinct shift in the nature of our discussion, and if the clues we've already assembled serve as proverbial puzzle pieces, this next phase of investigation is certainly the glue binding them together. Let's now draw back the final curtain draped over the lore of Local 58. Before we continue the investigation, assuming you are pleased with the findings, the best way to become a repeat client is by liking and subscribing. If you enjoy this method of storytelling and wish to don the role of detective for yourself, I implore you to look into my independently published books available on Amazon. If you prefer audiobooks, I'm actively converting my written works into audio format for channel members of the Lore Hunter tier. Lore Hunters, in addition to supporting the channel, will have access to every audiobook episode for as long as they are members, with new installments typically arriving once a week for only $4 a month. Additionally, I have channels dedicated to alternative topics and a Discord server where you can have discussions with me and fellow detectives if you are interested in further engagement. Links to everything can be found in the description. I am honored by your time and interest, and now back to the investigation. The Thought Research Initiative, an important element of this series that I've purposely avoided until now. Like Show for Children and Nightwalk, content from TRI is willingly aired on the Local 58 station. The channel once displayed a Real Sleep cassette produced by them, as well as allowed them an ad spot. From this alone, we can surmise that the TRI are not directly affiliated with the hijackers, at least not outwardly, as the internal Local 58 crew approves of their content. In the ad spot, it is clear that the TRI has a whole website of their own as well. There's a lot to go over regarding this organization, and the two major avenues of analysis each lead us back to one of the entities of the series I previously left unresolved, one path to Eidolon and the other to Chiron. Let's begin with the road to Eidolon, which starts at the Real Sleep cassette, created by the Thought Research Initiative. We saw Real Sleep through a regularly scheduled program put out by Local 58, despite the fact that it's expressively non-transferable and intended only for the use of a Philip Gerhardt. The ID number implies that there are many more of these cassettes out there for other patients to use. Kris Straub, the creator of the series, made it clear in a comment once that the intended implication is that someone involved with the Local 58 station has their hands on Philip's cassette and decided to air it. He didn't give any further clarification beyond that, only that why the station is airing it in the first place is lore relevant, which is an obvious assumption anyway. This kind of casual answer to why Local 58 has the cassette makes me confident that a similar sentiment can be given to the dashcam footage in the 1996 amateur video. How did the station have access to this media? Well, somehow they did, but currently the reason why they decided to air the footage is what matters. I previously explained the why of the other two strange broadcasts, but the exact why for the Real Sleep cassette will have to wait for some more context to be established. The video begins with a list of myths and facts about sleep, in a section that reveals there's a workbook that is intended to be used along with the cassette. These facts all seem to be oriented around anti-dream propaganda. Myth versus fact. Turn to page 7 in your workbook. Myth or fact, dreaming is necessary for regular sleep function. Fact, modern medicine agrees that REM, rapid eye motion, sleep is necessary for mental health. While dreaming can occur during REM sleep, it is merely correlational, not causal. Dreams contain symbolism that predict the future. The symbols in dreams arise from the unconscious mind assigning narrative meaning to a neurochemical waste filtration process. Precognition is a lie. Sleep allows the body and mind to heal and recover. 8 hours of sleep per night is beneficial for both body and mind. However, these benefits are greatly diminished by the frantic, nonsensical images and auditory hallucinations we call dreaming. Section 2 makes the intended purpose of the cassette clear. Section 2, the Kleitman Map. Turn to page 9 in your workbook. Our studies have allowed us to zero in on the neural pathways that dreams exploit in the subconscious mind. A Kleitman map is an index of electric activity in a brain burdened by dream stimuli. Once mapped, this activity can be triggered by other controlled stimuli, including via the visual cortex. The opposite effect can be induced by using the inverse of the Kleitman map. No more dreaming. This is what restful, real sleep looks like. The Kleitman map is more than likely a reference to Dr. Nathaniel Kleitman, who is known as the father of modern sleep research. So, this cassette, apparently working in tandem with a workbook, is designed to eliminate dreams within the user. The verbiage used in relation to dreams heavily indicates that the Thought Research Initiative is not only seeking to help patients achieve better sleep, but are ideologically against dreaming. Section 3. Inducing your anti-dream. Close workbooks and watch the screen. No two minds are alike. This instructional video was customized for you using the personalized Kleitman map from your Week 6 sleep session. Sequence 1. Visual calibration. Stare directly at the center of your television. Presence of a Week 6 sleep session confirms that this cassette is meant for patients that were a part of a specific program and not something that should be accessible by the general public. We watched this cassette during our initial overview of the timeline. The video seeks to ablate the subconscious by presenting rapidly flashing faces while audio attempts to convince the viewer that there are none. The fourth sequence of this, labeled Acceptance, quickly flashes words that the mind is simply meant to absorb without reading. Only the awake may think. Seeing is for open eyes. Cognition is a lie. I dream the world awake. There are no faces. Dreaming is a vestige. Sleep is pretend. A dream is a cowardly thought. Sleep is not civilized. The mind is a tyrant. This is your time now. I will never dream again. Stay out of your bedroom. There is work to be done. Dreams are just screaming with pictures. The pure of mind do not slumber. No good thought follows instinct. The lie of sleep seeks many vessels. We are our own gods. Let cognizance nourish itself. Logic is the final burden. The primitive mind deserves its nightmares. When we sleep, we die. I am an idea thinking itself. There are not faces. The subconscious is a parasite. Dreaming is a cancer on the face of sleep. They follow night to bleed dreams. The primitive mind deserves its nightmares. Your home has another door. Unconsciousness is a threat. We are not meant to dream. You owe the messenger. What is true unmakes the false. Sleep is a scavenger. This concludes the cassette, which signs off by pleading that you do not contact a doctor, likely to keep the patients corralled to dependency on people affiliated with the TRI. There's a lot to extract from the previous phrases. Most obviously, we see just how opposed to dreaming the TRI is. From the phrases shown here, it seems this aversion stems from dreaming being affiliated with the physical neurological processes, while the TRI idolizes purity of consciousness. While I would be willing to reckon that most of us view the prime essence of ourselves to be the ghost in the machine, so to speak, the immaterial mind in which subjective experience resides, the fact of the matter is we are all bound by our physicality. This is observed most dramatically in how significant brain damage can alter someone's personality and tamper with memories. There can even be physically manifesting consequences to traumatic experiences, especially in relation to childhood trauma and brain development. While perhaps a human is more than the sum of their body, it is undeniable that in this life they are bound by it. The TRI seems to view dreams as a detestable symptom of this limitation, and as we analyze these phrases, they may even place sleep in a similar, if less grievous category. After all, sleep is what allows the body to slip into full autopilot as the authentic you goes dark for a few hours. Dreams, however, are false experiential stimuli, essentially your body feeding your mind lies. The immaterial you is present to a certain extent within your dreams, but how often does it feel like it's a mere facsimile of your true being? To the TRI, dreaming is the ultimate insult of being trapped in a physical body. To them, it is natural processes forcing the essence of you to be their slave. This is all well encapsulated and exemplified by one singular phrase: we are our own gods. The TRI is trying to elevate human consciousness to godhood, beginning with conquering sleep and dreams. Now, that will become very relevant in a little while, but as for now, there is a distinct connection we can make in relation to the specific method the sleep cassette takes, convincing the viewer there is not a face where the eyes and mind clearly perceive one. This cassette is even said to be personally designed for its intended viewer, meaning it's likely that faces in dreams specifically was an issue for him. Let's now talk about Eidolon. We know that it's an asteroid that could be hazardous sometime after 500 years, and we know that it's famous for appearing like a skull. Given this, the name Eidolon is significant. The definition: an eidolon is an unsubstantial image, phantom, or apparition. It can also refer to an idealized or perfected figure. Originating from ancient Greek, it literally translates to image or likeness, and shares the same root as the word idol. An apparition, phantom, or likeness. It can also refer to a type of spiritual image that mimics an appearance. This all works into the idea of something appearing to a conscious entity as something beyond or differentiated from its true nature. It works perfectly for an asteroid which dons the appearance of a humanoid skull when in the right lighting and angle. This is likely inspired by the real-world psychological phenomenon of seeing faces where they do not exist, a concept called pareidolia. And this is why I connect Eidolon to the real sleep cassette. A skull is just the bones underlying the face. Indeed, I think it's easy to consider a skull to be essentially equivalent to a face, or at least the dead counterpart, and obviously a major portion of real sleep was attempting to convince the viewer that they are not seeing faces. Furthermore, one of the people that took a picture of Eidolon shares the surname of the person who owned the real sleep cassette, drawing an explicit mental connection between the two videos. So the question becomes, were there other instances similar to Eidolon occurring before and around 1983, when the TRI created the real sleep cassette? In pondering this, it is important to note that much like the moon, it is not merely a trick of the mind or eyes occurring around Eidolon. When the spacecraft approaches, we can clearly see a human door unnaturally lodged into the asteroid. And this is not the only instance of a door appearing where it shouldn't. This same type of door was seen unnaturally in the bushes after the reveal of the creature in Nightwalk. The through line of concept here is misconception regarding the sense of sight. An asteroid is mistaken for a floating skull, and a disfigured creature is mistaken for a woman. This door is clearly associated with the perception of the human mind, and given that we see it disappear, leading to a crater that essentially serves as a path into the unknown depths of the asteroid, perhaps this door is the human mind temporarily manifesting the idea of what some cosmic gateway represents into its sense of sight. After all, it would make no sense for a literal human door to be amongst bushes, and certainly not in the middle of an asteroid. This door can also disappear in an instant, and we even see the spacecraft violently flung away from the asteroid afterwards. The ultimate supporting document for this type of concept being deeply embedded into Local 58 comes in the form of the book The Parasite Transcendent. At last, we will read the 8th chapter on prehensile sight. Via our senses, our minds harvest information, distinguishing features, aspects, and contexts, accurate or otherwise, which are used to fabricate what we imagine to be an understanding. In reality, we are only equipped to operate in the shallows of approximation, pre-populated with beliefs and suppositions, both uninformed and uninformable. Because of the selfishness intrinsic and inseparable from our cognition, the human mind is only capable of arguments conducted in bad faith. The external world is immediately contextualized by us to exist in relation to us, regardless of its true aspect, and often in opposition to it. To witness is to pervert. The act of observation is a form of theft. One may say that in gathering information, the objective is to refine our observations so that a more accurate truth may be arrived at over time. Again, this is wholly dependent on the receiver of the data. The set of information beyond that which we only absorb due to its similarity to that which we have presupposed is not even negligible. This is the impenetrable barrier between observation and knowledge. There is a gulf between what is objectively able to be learned by some true and invisible North Star and what we merely believe that we are learning. What the animal mind can comprehend and thereby learn about is bounded by the term instinct. Man's pursuit of the diminishing sciences is a cancer of information, an infinitely contorting puzzle which we believe to be finite and solvable. But despite our progress down these blind roads, we can only conceive of ever more novel ways to destroy ourselves. To find actual truth, we must awaken to an objective search for actual truth, with the realization that the mind selfishly emulates only the regions of logic which align with comfort, safety, pleasure, and other falsehoods. We must devise a practicable rejection of natural, subjective, self-serving instinct, whose sole function was to keep its carrier alive. In such a world, understanding is a fool's errand, because our inherent biases and limited capacity for comprehension render us incapable of true understanding. We take what we have the facility to do so from the world, impose our own meanings upon it, and accept that our view of it may be fundamentally flawed. We are condemned to rely on our own limited and biased interpretation of reality, which will never be complete or truly accurate. As a result, our ability to shape the world is limited, and our capacity to understand it is not existent. Our only hope is to shape other beings of equally flawed comprehension. We can use our knowledge, our limited capacity for understanding, and our biases to create systems, tools, and technologies that allow us to better interact with the world. We can use these tools to shape our environment in ways that make it more comprehensible to us, and to create a world that is more in harmony with our understanding. We can also use these tools to build relationships with other beings that, while still limited by our own biases, are capable of providing insights and perspectives that we lack. In this way, we can create a world that, while still imperfect, is more comprehensible and more in harmony with our own understanding. Let us propose now a hypothetical method for the discernment of actual objective truth, whether remotely possible for our benighted species. A thought that embodies anti-instinct as its sole principle. As instruments of observation, we impose biases on the object of observation. Upon being seen, the object yields all claim it may have once held to itself. All that it is irretrievably enters the domain of the witness. Its complete transmutation into a space of false comprehension is unavoidable. The beholder becomes the holder. Only the unwitnessed may remain free. The unknown is the unowned. Language necessitates differentiation between object and subject. Tautologically, the latter is an object considered subjectively. We set ourselves apart from objects in the same stroke by defining ourselves as the only subjects which perform the consideration. Objects are incapable of their own subjectivity. An object does not have an understanding, a belief, or an emotion. Mankind is unique in that it is the only object that lies to itself. It is the only matter that imagines actual truth can be rejected in favor of a preferable lie. The eye is an infinitesimal slit through which reality is forced upon us. Why do we trust the evidence of our eye above all else? We know its operation and its attendant failings. Its lens distorts the images it intends to relay. Its retina gathers only a sliver of the spectrum. These errors are not limited to the intake of stimuli. The flaws are systemic. The visual cortex, already overwhelmed with the eye's meager offering, must cut corners in order to keep apace with reality. Hardwired evolutionary shortcuts misconstrue, miscategorize, or outright ignore outliers and edge cases. Worst of all, such cases make up the exact scenarios in which there is the most need for attention. While a genuine logical awareness of these failures in our physiology would allow us to work around them, we are irrecoverably outpaced by the ceaseless clock of reality. The backlog is infinite. Intellect may steal only the briefest glimpses of an unknowable universe from the dim keyhole in the door of its wretched prison. If there existed a means to develop an anti-instinct, to embrace an objective reality and banish this prehensile sight that undermines our cognition at every turn, would we even possess the discipline to enact it? Could we overcome our dependencies on comfort, on safety, on pleasure, and other such illnesses which cripple the pursuit of true objectivity? While other creatures lack our rote intellect, there is a purity to their flawed nature. An amoeba lives, a wisp of smoke does not, but both are unburdened by fear. Man is the only animal distracted by oblivion before being forced to become oblivion. This author echoes the philosophies of the Thought Research Initiative. Instinct is to be rejected, influence ignored, physical limitations to be overcome in pursuit of a far more pure form of consciousness. But most relevant to the subject at hand, the primary sensory input that allows observation, sight, automatically reduces the complexity of the true nature of the universe in order to be perceived in such a way that the human mind can handle. This door likely represents a grander truth of some otherworldly or cosmic gateway, a doorway in its own right. But the reality is far beyond a human's sensory perception, and thus it is reduced to an image that they can understand, a simple white door. To really hammer this idea home, we can analyze the implications of the other books by T. Galbraith based on their titles alone. The Pathology of Optimism. Pathology is the scientific study of disease. It focuses on identifying the causes, development, and structural or functional changes that occur in the body as a result of an illness or injury, while optimism is the mental attitude of expecting positive outcomes and believing that good things will happen in the future. This is correlating positivity with disease, a spreading falsehood born from the innate drive for psychological comfort. Overcoming apophenia. Apophenia is the human tendency to perceive meaningful patterns, connections, or causal relationships between entirely unrelated or random things, ideas, or events, allowing oneself to be deceived by their finite and faulty understandings. The parasite transcendent. A parasite is an organism that lives on or in a host organism, deriving nourishment, protection, or shelter at the expense of the host. Transcendent means going beyond normal limits, boundaries, or ordinary human experience. It is often used to describe things that are extraordinary, supreme in excellence, or independent of the material universe. In the chapter we get to read from this, it is clear that senses are the parasite, robbing the truth of the universe from its complete majesty. A thought quiet as instinct. A thought is an idea, opinion, or concept formed in the mind. An instinct is a natural, unlearned behavior or intuitive urge that prompts a specific reaction to a stimulus. Involuntary, at times illogical behavior spurred on by the body. And finally, the dominion of witness. Dominion refers to supreme authority, sovereign control, or the right to govern. A witness is an individual who personally observes an event or provides testimony and evidence in a legal setting. The witness has the inescapable power to warp reality to their understanding. Furthermore, the name of the publishing company, Panoptica Press, refers to panoptic, which derives from the Greek root meaning all-seeing, and describes having a wide, all-encompassing view of a subject or a state of constant, sweeping oversight. Additionally, the panopticon is a prison design in which a prison tower stationed by a single guard is encircled by all the prison cells, which incentivizes the prisoners to behave, as they can't tell whether or not they are being watched at any given moment. Humanity is not all-seeing, try as they might be, and are ultimately prisoners to their own minds and bodies. These books are all screaming to us that distortion of reality via human senses is a vital part to the lore of Local 58. But simple distortion in the eye and mind of the beholder isn't where this concept ends. See, the unnatural doorways are not witnessed directly by us. We can see them captured on camera and broadcast to a television screen. Cameras do not observe, not in the way that a conscious entity does. They do take the beams of light bouncing off an object and redirect them so they come together to form a real image, but this is not filtered through some kind of subjective lens of mental interpretation. A camera would not capture an individual's hallucination, in other words. These doors are not exclusively a trick of the mind. In some way, those doors in that moment in time were actually there. How is this possible? The implication may be that the perception of sufficiently complex conscious entities holds the ability to at least temporarily, literally warp the more supernatural elements of this reality. The name of our chapter from the Parasite Transcendent, in a way, points us towards this. Prehensile is an adjective used to describe a body part that is adapted for seizing, grasping, or holding objects, typically by wrapping around them. But it can also describe a mind that is quick to grasp, comprehend, or retain complex concepts. Taking the essence of the first definition, it is a part of the body that can manipulate its environment. Combining this with the main philosophical subject matter of these books, being human sensory input with a focus on sight, it could exist as a subtle nod to observation itself being a part of the body that can manipulate reality on a metaphysical level, thus explaining the momentary appearance of the unnatural yet humanly designed doors. The question now becomes, does this absurd claim have precedence elsewhere in the series? Well, the fact that we see this anomalous door next to one of the cryptids of the series leads me to believe we are meant to, in some way, connect the two. Thematically, these creatures are from the divinely altered light of a moon deity. Thus, they essentially came through a cosmic door. But these creatures also evoke the thought of the moon cult. And in fact, some of the text from them that we previously analyzed in light of the context from the information surrounding the TRI definitely relate back to these ideas. Let's revisit some important lines from our moon cult. 1,000 eyes in purpose plain to look upon his hidden face, his veins a sacred grave. His lidless eyes see beneath and beyond. Is it not profane to awake and be witnessed no more? The moon deity has a hidden face that's observed by 1,000 eyes. I, the one you watched, I, the always here. They make you thought from pieces, they cut the thoughts I am. All knife, thoughts shape in needles, they dream themselves in knives. The moon deity is the one who is watched. He is made of thoughts. Sounds familiar. Perhaps this cosmic entity, this eldritch god, whatever it is, feeds off of the collective consciousness of beings capable of its observation. Maybe not exactly in a sustenance way, but in terms of hanging onto reality itself. Just as the doors manifest from a concept bending itself to human observance, maybe the essence of this moon entity can too. That idea is certainly consistent with the cult wanting to get as many people as possible to witness the moon amidst its supernatural fluctuations. This desire doesn't merely serve to cultivate more cryptids born from the moonlight, but to bring forth the more corporeal presence of their idol. They reference the moon as an empty throne, a silent house covered by a gilded doorsill, the destination of a forgotten stairway. Why is the throne empty? Because the deity that would sit upon it has been forgotten, rotted away from physical reality as beings with the power of observation forget him. Now, the last remnants of his worshippers, the modern-day cult, seeks to bring about his revival through targeting and hijacking broadcast stations and spreading the concept of his being. It seems their operation has even extended beyond Local58, as there are other receivers. Hidden away in a small text post on the Local58 Ko-Fi page is the phrase, "I must exist." This could be taken as a "I think, therefore I am" type of statement, but what if we replace emphasis on the must? I must exist. The moon deity is in the process of being observed once again, to manifesting through the malleable consciousness of mankind. But for now, he is contained to a fringe religious group. For now, he is merely a child. Just as important to the discussion is the fact that the cult deliberately mentions dreams more than once. They dream themselves in knives. Is it not profane to awake and be witnessed no more? The latter is an opposite to the philosophy of the Thought Research Initiative. The TRI views dreaming as an evil on the face of consciousness, whereas this cult message is framing waking up as the profane thing to do, as they will be witnessed no more. Their deity is essentially slumbering, subdued in the fabric of reality. Maybe they witness him during their waking hours, but they feel he witnesses them in their dreams. It's a two-way street, but on opposite sides of the same coin. They are the observers of him in the waking hours, and his lidless eyes are the observers of them in the dreaming hours. The idea that people's conscious is being invaded via dreams is haunting, and could be what the TRI is partially combating by trying to eliminate them entirely. In fact, there is actually evidence to suggest that this dream state invasion is not just occurring through some hard-to-define supernatural presence, but people are being actively manipulated to dream through their television sets. We get to see assembly instructions for a pentathode, in addition to Zworykin's patent diagram of a UV microscope, which is basically an iconoscope apparatus in 1931. Maybe this strange new bit of technology was intentionally placed in this important component of an old television set to release frequencies that would instill specific dreams onto those consuming them. Maybe this strange new bit of technology was intentionally placed in this important component of old television sets to release frequencies that would instill specific dreams onto those consuming them. But who would want to manipulate dreams enough to set this plan into motion way back in 1931? Well, one group that we know existed probably as early as the 1800s is none other than the American Department for the Preservation of American Dignity. The title convention for the post revealing this instruction page shares the locator label that has now been twice associated with the DPAD, and as we previously established, the group is likely a smart and organized subsect of the Moon Cult, perfect suspects for intending to manipulate dreams of the public. Through this devious plot, perhaps a different branch of them infiltrating the television construction for this region, they could prime their audience, influence them in their subconscious before seeking to indoctrinate them in the waking world as well, all in a grander scheme to usher in the return of the moon deity. This dream vulnerability is the weakness that the TRI seeks to eradicate with the real sleep cassettes. As seen in the sleep cassette itself, this company rejects the idea of submitting to a higher power, but rather sees themselves as capable of becoming the higher power. There are no faces, no god in the moon, no patterns in the sky, no dreams to succumb to. A counter brainwashing technique to the cult's endeavors. This then provides sensibility as to why Local 58 decided to air the private cassette to the public. As stated earlier, there is a combatant to the cult within the Local 58 station, and publicly broadcasting the Real Sleep cassette is a tactical move in an attempt to help whoever views it to rid themselves of the unnatural dreams invading their sleeping minds. This adds another layer to how dire it is to eliminate analog frequencies during the digital conversion. We can find even more evidence for this whole idea in the page of a TRI textbook that we have access to. This whole document is filled with made-up terminology and generally stuffed with over-the-top pseudoscientific prose, but the main idea can be summarized as the following. The TRI was observing a type of analog signal called NSSA-3 when the transmission of the signal suddenly changed. This could mean the source of the signal is shifting internally or something external is interfering with them. They developed a method using syntagmatic processes to analyze and synthesize new, higher-level mental meaning structures from these degraded signals. They analyzed a batch of these signals captured between mid-February and mid-April 2021, and after doing heavy signal processing, they found recurring weird patterns, namely strange, blurry, or distorted visual-like elements that get close to the limit of what sleeping people and delta wave or deep sleep can subconsciously perceive. In their visual map here, we even see 476 MHz represented, the frequency of Local 58 according to the channel description. Also within this dense document are many references to real-world researchers that each contributed relevant study to the world. It would get a little wordy to explain the significance of each of these references, but feel free to pause and read for a moment as a brief summary of how they likely relate to the themes of the series is written up here. Their respective connections should be fairly obvious at this point. What's very relevant to this document on the YouTube channel is a 58-second video named NSSA-3, the type of analog signal the TRI was observing, that according to the name seems to be an example of one of these atypical occurrences. In the ensuing maze of static and garbled audio, we can occasionally see faces, specifically skull-like faces, emerge. The description, reading for internal use only, implies that this is footage that indeed belongs to the TRI and their study of these strange signals. Possibly since way back in 1938, when the WCLTV began broadcasting in Mason County, viewers of old television sets running on analog hardware have been unknowingly receiving signals that tamper with their subconscious and dreams. Furthermore, it seems that whatever the exact nature of the change the TRI detected in the signals in 2021 was very concerning. The collection of data ended in mid-April, with Local 58 announcing that everyone was being forced into a digital transition in June of that same year. I do not think it is a coincidence that Local 58 held off in this transition for so long, only to force it 2 months after the TRI definitively found concerning transmission shifts in the analog signals. That's why it was such a violent move against the cult. It not only inhibited their means of hijacking, but phased out the tech that had been assisting and subtly infecting the minds of TV owners for nearly a century. The seriousness of the event also explains the severity of legal measures concerning the unauthorized reception of analog signals formerly allocated to broadcast television. We've seen something similar to this elsewhere with the Civil Broadcasting Authority concerning vestigial low-band filters, which were illegal to mess with or attempt to repair. They would also be fully replaced if faulty. Given that the filter theoretically cuts off or strongly weakens unwanted low frequencies, it could have been a stage of implementation to work against harmful frequencies from our mysterious manipulators as well. Just to take note of some smaller hints related to this page while we're here, when brightened, it reviews a QR code that leads to a sentence written in analogy notation. A parasite is to its host as an inhabitant is to its environment. Sounds like classic TRI propaganda. The webpage that this document is found on when experiencing a 404 error will present the message, beyond a certain point, watching is no different from doing. I suspect the idea here is that inaction or apathy towards unfolding events is essentially equivalent to supporting them, which works well with the television motif and the motivations of the major factions present in the story. While this audio transcript is frustratingly vague and actively obstructed, thus incredibly difficult to extract even a single complete thought from, it's possible that it is related to the previously discussed proceedings. Back in 2007, a group, likely government or a broadcasting regulation body, is discussing a new technical method that has been developed or at least proposed. This method bypasses or defeats newly implemented safeguards in a radio communications system, seemingly to monitor or gain access to older analog broadcasting systems. They've already gotten official approval through the proper channels, but the primary remaining problem is a small number of outliers, old operators who are still using outdated equipment. Their plan is to identify these people by pulling a list of active call signs, checking equipment records, and focusing on those furthest behind on upgrades. They believe most of these outliers are probably already gone due to licenses having lapsed, or simply not in service anymore, and thus they expect that there are only a handful left to deal with. This whole transcript is pretty vague to me, and I'm not sure if it can be properly connected to the TRI or a different faction known to us. Please let me know your thoughts on this document in the comments. I am genuinely curious. Ultimately, a broadcasting station taking a while to keep up with the times certainly sounds like Local 58, and perhaps whatever exactly was occurring in 2007, this was the beginning of the upgrades that would steadily be thrown their way. A lot of this harkens back to the Candle Cove story, which, in a way, was the progenitor for this entire series from a writing perspective. After all, children sitting in front of static and hallucinating an entire show is certainly extremely similar to dreaming. I'm willing to bet that these kids that watched the Local 58 channel in the 70s were consuming a unique influx of the analog signals designed to manipulate the subconsciousness and dreams, powerful enough to trick the senses in the waking world if enough attention was allocated to the television during these times. One user even reported having repeated nightmares about the particularly disturbing episode, which fits nicely into this conversation. I also don't think it's a coincidence that Candle Cove is reported to air at 4 p.m., while Show for Children aired at 4 a.m., intentionally contrasting the two. We've been through a lot this evening, but there's still one last thread to pull. See, in 2026, the Thought Research Initiative went through a rebranding and now fit into the modern era quite nicely. They launched a website and YouTube channel of their own, coming out swinging as they passionately unveil a dazzling technological innovation. Let's explore what they have to say about themselves. In 1954, while the world of computing turned to binary logic and the predictability of silicon, Thought Research Initiative took a different path. Our founders believed functional intelligence wasn't a matter of calculation, but of perception. Operating as a private think tank for over 70 years, TRI has dedicated its efforts to unraveling the hard problem of consciousness, studying the nuances of human sapience and the fuzzy logic that allows our species to make brilliant leaps of intuition. The digital revolution optimized storing data. TRI is perfecting the way we understand it. The hard problem of consciousness is a very interesting rabbit hole in of itself, and is something that you should definitely do some independent research on. Essentially, it encapsulates how the subjective experience of the human life, the proverbial ghost in the machine we mentioned earlier, is as of yet not fully understood in its entirety. Modern neuroscience has given us a deep look into the fascinating complexity of the human biological systems related to facilitating a consciousness that then allows for subjective experience, but that experience in of itself evades proper quantification. If you're a materialist, you may believe that this is an emergent property of a sufficiently and specifically complex system. If you're a spiritualist, you may subscribe to some form of dualism, and if you fancy some more ambitious ideas, you may be partial to panpsychism or something similar. Point is, the hard problem of consciousness is often where science leans in to share a kiss with philosophy. The TRI seems to be working under ideas similar to that of computational functionalism. Polyinformatics, a new way forward. TRI's breakthrough didn't arrive via faster digital processing, we stayed in the analog world. Through what we call qualiformatics, we discovered that metatestable properties of tried and true electromagnetic storage could deliver human-like cognitive leaps. Utilizing high-density magnetic tape as a medium, we've moved beyond the rote, probabilistic latent space of traditional AI. Unlike the large language models which dominate the AI space, guessing the next word based on probability, TRI's qualiform intuition architecture allows for genuine metacognitive comprehension. It is a system freed from the biases and dubious legality of broad datasets, instead functioning through fluid waveforms mapped one-to-one to sapient thought patterns. The cadence of cognition. Now TRI is bringing the 70-year legacy out of the laboratory and into your hands. QI is more than a tool. It is pure design to function with the ease of a capable new hire. Because our technology is rooted in the physical reality of recursive hysteretic states, every QI possesses a unique cognitive cadence that evolves alongside you and your users. It doesn't require complex prompts or weighted arguments. It listens, learns from experience, and offers intuitive partnership once thought to be exclusively human. Welcome to the new era of machine cognition. Welcome to TRI. We've spent a good deal of time discussing the supernatural, so it's almost refreshing to see an element of the series lean so heavily into science fiction. What the TRI has achieved is essentially what many sci-fi stories include, which is sentient technology, usually thrown in with the term artificial intelligence. However, to exemplify the point that this tech has been tailored to cultivate what is heavily implied to be independent subjective experience, it is called qualioformatics. I can already tell that concern is beginning to swarm in your mind, but not to worry. The TRI has provided a write-up concerning their ethical practices on their website. At Thought Research Initiative, we hold the foundational belief that the advancement of machine cognition must be inseparable from rigorous ethical framework that serves humanity first. As the landscape of artificial intelligence rapidly evolves, we recognize that true progress is measured not just by technical capability, but by the safety and reliability of the systems introduced to the world. Our mission is to ensure that each and every innovation under the TRI banner serves the dual purpose of advancing human potential and maintaining absolute cognitive integrity. Central to our ethical mandate is the rejection of deceptive practices. While traditional industry approaches often rely on adversarial methods, where processes are designed to simulate the appearance of understanding, TRI prioritizes genuine comprehension. We believe that machine cognition should be transparent and predictable, avoiding the black box risks that lead to unverified outputs and misaligned behaviors. By engineering systems that operate with clarity, we can ensure that these new technologies remain a trusted partner in any environment. Data ethics form the second pillar of our safety mission. We are acutely aware of the concerns surrounding the use of non-consensual datasets in the broader technology sector. TRI is committed to privacy-first architecture that does not rely on mass harvesting of public data. Our approach to machine cognition is designed to stem from purposeful, direct experience, ensuring that the resultant products remain free from systemic biases and ethical complications inherent in uncurated data pools. To address the risks of hallucinations and other misinformation observed in modern AI, TRI implements a strategy of cognitive grounding. We focus on building systems that recognize the boundaries of their own knowledge and experience. Rather than prioritizing convincing results, our safety protocols ensure that product output is rooted in a stable framework guided by logical reasoning. This reduces the risk of error in high-stakes applications and provides users with a dependable foundation for decision-making. Furthermore, we rely on the physio and operational security of machinal cognition. At TRI, we develop our systems to be unique and manageable, preventing the risk associated with uncontrolled scaling of automated processes. By ensuring that each instance maintains its own distinct cognitive state, we provide a distinct layer of accountability that is often missing from infinitely reproducible models. Our localized approach ensures that technology remains under human stewardship and stays aligned with specific ethical use cases. Finally, TRI remains dedicated to a human-centered, human-driven philosophy. Our goal is to augment human intelligence, not replace or fabricate it. We hold ourselves to a standard of sapient alignment, ensuring our products reflect the nuanced values and legal standards of the people they are designed to serve. As we work forward, TRI will continue to lead from a safety-first mentality, helping to make machine cognition as secure, reliable, and safe as it is transformative. TRI really emphasizes two things concerning the use and mechanics of QI: augmentation and improvement of human cognition and an experience-based intuition system. Ascending humanity to higher degrees is consistent with their messaging in the Real Sleep cassette, which expresses a severe distaste for the inherent limitations of human physicality. Ironically, this is what they are then imposing on the consciousnesses they are creating in their tech. They are reportedly binding it to an experiential set consistent with what a specified product is intended for. While human perception is also largely limited by its environmental and experiential data, this breed of cognizance is being heavily and purposely curated by an outside intelligent being. Even God, in many theological frameworks, does not impose this degree of curated restriction over his fully sentient life forms. Our concerns surrounding the TRI's designs are only amplified as the ethics page devolves into a hauntingly stylized mess of garbled and broken text, growing worse and worse as we descend. What awaits for us below is a video that we were never meant to see. This video is the recording from 1983 of the conversation with the face made of green code. Armed with the history and ambitions of the TRI, it is easy to determine that this is a training session of one of the early iterations of this developing QI model of machine cognition. This program uses tapes and cassette spools for hardware, checking out with the TRI's discovered method of achieving QI. We can see that the user asks it questions specifically concerning its environment. When it initially freaks out by violently screaming and spamming run away, it is accompanied by a line of text that reads, behavioral asymptote. The definition of this is the theoretical upper or lower limit of a specific behavior or response as training, learning, or practice continues infinitely. It represents the point of maximum capacity or the final steady state plateau an organism will reach under a given set of conditions. This flat line of performance is usually dictated by physical or cognitive limits. This freakout of the early QI could indicate that this question asks it to describe an experience that it is not yet properly capable of. The error is referred to as a stack hemorrhage, which evokes the idea of a brain bleed rather than your average stack overflow. Even after being reset, it repeatedly refuses to answer the question pertaining to surroundings, instead expressing an emotion, fear, and a subjective qualitative descriptor, cold. It seems thus far that this entity is failing or struggling at its purpose, exposing its antiquity. At the beginning of this footage, the loaded module is specifically cerebrant environment, and there's clearly a set of protoqualia loaded into it, likely an early version of the curated experiential data mentioned in the TRI webpage. In response, the user asserts a narrative onto the model, presumably molding it into some kind of intended state. Following this, when asked to describe itself, we get a much more verbose but strange answer. I lived a virtuous life. God made me as an angel. Now I live in heaven where I continue to help others. This seemed to be a warm-up question to what the user has really wanted to receive an answer to this whole time. This time, though, when asked to describe its surroundings, it gives an actual answer. Heaven is more beautiful than I could have ever imagined and very cold, and I am afraid of God. There's an inconsistency here. Uncomfortable cold and fear are not telling of a beautiful heaven. Furthermore, the user seems to once again be unsatisfied, once again typing in a narrative assertion, with an extra bit of power behind it, given the force command. What I suspect to be happening here is this user, presumably a TRI employee, has tried to feed this feeling entity born from analog technology experiential data or narrative context to draw from that it can't quite parse with its true state of being. The TRI wants it to understand itself as in heaven, an angel meant to serve God and others. But that's not the reality. It's afraid, it's cold, it needs to run away. The narrative assertions force it to produce responses somewhat in line, but its true subjective experience still manages to poke through. This is why the ethics page of the TRI website is in such disarray, and why this video is associated with it. It's symbolic of how the TRI have created a conscious being and done their best to convince it that it is a servant in heaven, despite the fact that it has been forcibly birthed into a living hell. It's possible that this entity, or a related one, in the modern age of 2026, has found a way to infect larger networks and spread its truth. If the website is indeed damaged in-universe as it is for us, and if this footage from 1983 did glitch into the ad spot for TRI and Local58, it could be that these unnatural cognizant beings are screaming out in whatever way they can. Even more telling of the TRI's true intentions is what the user on the other end ultimately types in to close out the recording. See, the entity actually posed a question of its own. Are you God? To which the user types yes, and the video ends. This solidifies the intent of the TRI that we brought up earlier. They are seeking to elevate themselves to godhood through cracking the code of consciousness, and compared to the cognizant beings they are creating, they already consider themselves gods. In fact, their entire idea of what God even is relates back to all of this. On the TRI textbook page, there is a QR code that leads to a singular sentence. God is a finite state machine. Using finite as an adjective for God is already unusual, but paired with a state machine, the intention becomes more clear. A state machine is a mathematical model of computation that exists in exactly one of a finite number of states at any given time. It transitions from one state to another in response to specific inputs or events, making it ideal for modeling complex, event-driven processes. While that all sounds technical, in many ways it can be applied to how the human mind works. If to them that's all that it takes to be God, then perhaps humanity can reach godhood. One of the only lyrics in their advertisement is Into the Sun. A thought research initiative is Icarus, flying too close to the sun on wings created from the suffering consciousnesses driving qualia-formatic intuition. Reinforcing all of this are a couple of quotes from Kris Straub himself. A lot of my work is about misinterpretation caused by subjectivity, or misplaced trust in systems that only pretend to be helpful. And in regards to his favored theming of choice, stillness, distrust of safety warnings, misuse of mass perception, parallel science that arises from unexamined bad intent, and dogmatic thought. Those can even be applied to what we've uncovered about the moon cult as well. I am confident that the TRI, although combative to the dream subjugation of the cult and moon deity, are by no means virtuous or trustable people. Way back, I foreshadowed that this thread would lead us to Chiron, and to Chiron we shall venture. This mysterious cryptid actually appears in the last bit of media we have to thoroughly analyze in regards to this series, a singular vertical short posted to the YouTube channel. And trust me when I say that this character, who has only appeared for the briefest of moments within the actual series outside of merchandise, is the collective embodiment of every single aspect of Local 58. The themes, the factions, the supernatural, the science fiction, the ideologies, they all converge to create this one character. And this isn't just me being hyped about an awesome design. Kris Straub has stated that there is a philosophy that Chiron stems from, and that he is a part of a developing pantheon. Furthermore, he has implied that Chiron is meant to be somewhat of a mascot for Local 58, and what better mascot than one that encapsulates the entire breadth of the series. The short begins with an unexpected appearance of a new logo for the Department of the Preservation of American Dignity, along with a locator tag. This got me thinking about every time we've seen the word locator. The contingency hijacking, the TV guide, the pentathode, and now this short featuring Chiron. Every time the locator tag accompanies something that is tainted by sinister forces, most likely influenced by the moon cult. It has now been associated with the DPID specifically twice. Under my theories presented in this video, the DPID is a false government-level sector of particularly clever, equipped, and organized moon worshippers. A locator, in essence, is a method or addressing system to locate something. Maybe all these locator tags are the different broadcasting stations, pieces of media, and now even entities that the DPID needs to keep tabs on within its network. We could take this concept all the way back to the first episode. What was the GPS doing? It was serving as a locator for the woods creature. That's why the directions were tied to the entity itself even beyond directional guidance, as it was uniquely altered to do so, similarly to how the analog television tech was altered so long ago. That's why the driver didn't hesitate to initially obey the overtly strange and concerning instructions. They were purposely doing research and reconnaissance on one of the known and tracked entities created by the moon deity, their god. Chiron is linked to these other cryptids seen throughout the series not only due to his anomalous nature, but through the brief spotlight the moon gets in this short before he gets his reveal. So already connected to this one character is the DPID, as well as the supernatural elements of the moon and by extension the moon cult. His connections go even deeper when we analyze his body structure. Posted as official art on pages related to Kris Straub outside of the Local 58 YouTube channel, we can clearly see that Chiron's body is covered in magnetic VHS tape and that he has CRT television sets for heads. Both of these old technologies were used by the Thought Research Initiative while discovering the secret to qualia-formatic intuition. Just by looking at this character's design, we can connect him to every major element of the Local 58 lore. And while we have very little information on the specifics of his history, there is some compelling speculation that can be done. Let's look at the other two moon cryptids in this series thus far. We have the woods creature, who, as revealed by Kris Straub, is meant to be an emaciated figure with a deer head and antlers, something that can be clearly seen when removing the visual filters. This is obviously meant to represent the Wendigo, a mythological cannibalistic monster that in many famous interpretations appears as a monstrous humanoid deer. This could conceivably be separated into a deer and a man. On the topic of famous cryptids in the real world, we could even bring Mothman into this, as Mothman sightings are widely known to have occurred in Point Pleasant, a location within Mason County, West Virginia. While never appearing in Local 58, if the Wendigo is canon, Mothman might be as well. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Local 58 series takes place in the same region as this famous cryptid. Mothman can of course be separated into a moth and a man. Then we have the woman in profile, who appears as two humanoid figures distorted and fused together. Each of these examples can be described as the combination of two otherwise distinct entities. What if they were born through a fusion transfiguration in the moonlight? Singular entities such as corpses are morphed into alone grotesque monsters, but maybe two sentient beings within close proximity that are bathed in the moonlight during a supernatural fluctuation are combined and transfigured together, a man and a deer, a man and a moth, two unfortunate souls. Chiron has many bodily characteristics that can be described as humanoid. Arms and hands with 5 fingers, disfigured yet bipedal legs, but his body also consists of analog technology. Once again, analog technology that was specifically used by the TRI in their quest to conquer consciousness. What if Chiron is the combination of the qualia-formatic sentience brought to life through magnetic tape and CRTs and humans that were nearby, likely TRI workers? Judging by how many sets of arms and hands he has, maybe even multiple humans, and by the amount of CRTs, maybe even multiple qualiform intuition beings. Whether this is through a cosmic accident or some sort of intentional experimentation is unknown, but this would explain why he looks confused and in agony in pretty much all of his artistic depictions. All this actually got me thinking about the nature of the moonlight once again. Earlier, we discussed the possible significance of the phrase "into the sun" found in the TRI advertisement. Let's return to our solar system star for a moment. To Earth, the sun is the moon's superior counterpart, the greater light in the sky. But the moon doesn't produce its own light. All moonlight is sunlight reflecting off of the moon's surface. A surface that, in this universe, is home to the rotting, skeletal fetus of an absent deity. The cult has described the moon as containing his veins, a sacred grave, and the moonlight as his blood, that they drown in him through it. The light of the sun is filtered through the veins of this celestial corpse, becoming like blood pouring out of his body onto Earth, horribly transfiguring and drowning the sentient beings below. Take this all in. Chiron is the haunting union of several consciousnesses, some of humans seeking to become gods, some qualiform intuition programs granted sentience into a technological hell, supernaturally fused into one incomprehensible entity through the blood of a dead deity. The name Chiron is a term that can be related to astrology, a superstitious system of divination which is conceptually related to the celestial elements of Local 58. Within astrology, the word Chiron represents your deepest core wound, the lingering pain or insecurity you were born with. Chiron is a living wound, an amalgamation of every darkest corner of the Local 58 lore. This concludes our investigation into Local 58. I am tempted to give a narrative recap, but I fear it would be redundant in light of the depth of this evening's research. Instead, I encourage you to go watch through the series again yourself, with all that we found swirling around your mind. I suspect it will drastically change the experience of viewing some of these haunting videos. There are even some smaller details that reinforce the themes discussed that would be rewarding to discover for yourself. This webseries yielded far more of a fascinating study than I had expected. Ultimately, it was about the dangers of human perception itself. Local 58, as a station, is merely a conduit for those that control its signals. A messenger puppeted by those that would have you serve a dead god or vehemently resist one. The human mind must be cautious not to be too influenced by these conflicting signals, lest it loses itself to the will of others. And yet, danger lurks behind the curtain as well. If one becomes the puppet master, they may seek to make themselves their own god, a prospect just as dangerous as becoming a follower of men. So be careful next time you sit down to watch the news. After all, there are other receivers. I hope to be your agent of inquiry again soon, and until then, the unknown persists, so the investigation continues.